So I wanted to talk about this graph that's been going around on social media that shows a supposed gap opening up between the political ideologies of men and women. So as you can see in the graph, it shows that over time, women are becoming more liberal and men are becoming more conservative. So you can see, especially in South Korea, that since the 2015, men have just kind of dropped off a cliff. They've become extremely more conservative, whereas in the U.S., it's been more of a steady downtrend. And I wanted to create this video to give my thoughts about why I think this is. So, the first thing I think certain people would conclude based on looking at this graph is that this is a terrible thing. And the reason I think that people would have that idea is that it's become popular for some reason in Western culture to associate conservatism with something negative. So to be labeled a conservative by many people now is akin to being labeled as a bigot or as someone who is intolerant or tyrannical or abusive, right? All of these just horrible sounding words have come to be associated with the label conservative. And so to see that men are becoming more conservative is seen as something that sort of makes people fearful, or at the very least that it's not ideal. And I think it's because in the mainstream right now, progressivism and liberalism is seen as sort of the norm, or what's preferable, whereas conservatism is sort of against the good, right? It's like if you're a conservative, you're standing in the way of the development of society, for the harmony of all people. If you're conservative, you're sort of standing in the way of that, and you're standing up for outdated norms and ideas that no longer have a place in the modern world, right? So overall, conservatism at the moment just has a terrible brand, right? It's like it's dangerous to consider yourself conservative or label yourself as being conservative. And so to see that more and more men are identifying as conservative would give many people sort of cause for alarm. What I think is very interesting is the reason why I think men are becoming more conservative. And I don't think it's because men actually like the ideas that are associated with conservatives. So I don't think that in general men are running off to the altar to get married. They're not running off to start families. They're not, piling into the church to worship Christianity. So it's not so much the ideas of conservatism that is why men are attracted to it. It's actually, I think, because conservatives are criticizing certain ideas that men don't like, or that men feel are unnecessarily sort of pressing down upon them, right? So I'll explain. So in mainstream Western culture at the moment, men are seen as sort of the enemy, right? And part of that is because we have identity politics, and we have this idea that you're guilty for the sins of your group, which is a horrible idea. But what that means in practice is that because men are sort of seen as this group that have oppressed other people throughout history, they've oppressed women, and in particular white men, have oppressed women and other groups, minority groups, that specifically white men are seen as evil, right? They're seen as a group that that has guilt. And if you're a white man in the present, then it's seen as you're seen as being guilty for the sins of your whole group, right? And that's a horrible idea because as an individual person, just kind of growing up and trying to find your place in society, you're being told that you're guilty for all of these terrible acts that you didn't perpetrate, right? That you had no part in doing, right? But because of your arbitrary group membership, your sex and the color of your skin, your race, because you happen to fall within these arbitrary groups, you have this guilt that's kind of foisted upon you. And not only do you have this guilt, you're expected to apologize for the misdeeds of other people who are within your group. And you're supposed to atone for the sins of the other members of your group, right? Sins that have been committed in the past and were committed by people other than yourself who you had no contact with. And so if you're told that as a person, right away you're put on the defensive, right? You're thinking, I had nothing to do with any of these things that you're accusing me of. Why do I have to apologize? Why do I have to pay a toll in my life, right? Why do I have to adjust myself in some way for terrible things that other people did just because I happen to be in the same arbitrary group as them? And it's a terrible idea, and it's a demotivating idea and a demoralizing idea. And if you're constantly being told that, if you're being told that you have to atone for the sins of the other members of your group in the past, and that you're inherently privileged because of your group membership and this and that, and that you're the source of so many problems in the world, well, you're going to just want to not participate in that type of society, right? You're going to want to not engage in that world. And you're going to look to see where are these ideas coming from. And these men are going to see that these ideas are coming from progressivism, right? Modern day progressivism is the source of these ideas. It's the source of the tyrannical patriarchy. Men are the reason everything is bad. And so you're going to see that the source of these ideas are progressives. And the only group of people who criticize these progressive ideas are conservatives. And so this is the reason I think that men are becoming more conservative, because, again, it's not that they're really interested in the conservative ideas. They're not interested in Christianity or family or marriage. I mean, maybe they might be, but that's not the main reason why they're identifying with conservatives. They're identifying with conservatives because they see the conservative party and conservative figures as being the only source of criticism towards these ideas that they themselves don't agree with, right? That these ideas that sort of are being leveled against these men, right? And it's terrible because as a progressive, you don't want to see men become more conservative. And the big mistake I think that progressives will make is they'll see this and think that, well, it's just evidence that we need to try even harder, right? We need to do more activism. We need to get at men's minds at an even younger age, right? I need to make sure that my son is a good feminist, right? I need to push all of these ideas of toxic masculinity and patriarchy and privilege I need to push all of these ideas even harder, because the fact that men are becoming more conservative is just evidence that we need to do more, right? We need to work harder. And the ironic thing is that that's the exact opposite of the approach that would bring people or bring men back to a more moderate position. If you push the progressive ideas and the ideas of toxic masculinity and privilege and patriarchy, if you push those ideas harder, then it will only push men further away, right? It's like progressives worry about the radical right, right? They worry about the alt-right. But the ironic thing is that I think the alt-right only becomes stronger the more radical the progressives become, right? So the harder progressives push their ideas, the more extreme the progressives become. It actually powers up the right. And that's the reason that I think men are identifying as conservative. And so if progressives want men to go back to being more moderate, they have to just back off, right? They have to back off these ideas of accusing people, especially young men, young white men, that they're guilty of some crime that they didn't commit, right? That they need to atone for the sins of other white men, in history. I mean, it sounds so absurd to just say it out loud, but that's actually the ideas that many people hold in our society now. They genuinely think that the proper approach is to shame these men and try to make them feel guilty and own up to their privilege and apologize and just bow down, at the feet of others. And that's the solution, right? It's so ridiculous because that's not what's going to happen. You're going to create the exact monster that you fear if you do that. So, yeah, I think that it's a terrible thing. And I think that if you're progressive, then, really the solution is to actually back off. It's actually to let go of some of these more radical, more extreme takes. Stop calling men toxic. Stop, accusing them of having privilege, even if they do have privilege. That's the thing, is that even if someone does have privilege, say because of their sex or because of their race, accusing them of it is actually counterproductive, as strange as that seems, right? It's like, if you actually want to make things better, you want to back off. You want to ease up and allow other people to come to the table and work with you and negotiate with you, right? The moment you start just accusing them of things and labeling them as with these negative labels, it's not going to produce anything. It's simply going to cause that person to disengage. And what are they going to do? They're going to be more tempted to become the monster that you fear. That's the thing. And I'm not saying conservatives are monsters by any means, but definitely the more extreme radical end of the right are monsters, right? As anyone would agree with. And so I think that you have to just let go of the anger and the resentment and the vitriol, right? You got to stop accusing young men of all of these things, of these crimes that they themselves didn't commit. And you have to let go of viewing the world through this lens of group identity. It's just not, I think, the appropriate way to to view and treat other people. You should treat other people as individuals. I mean, that's how you yourself would want to be treated. And so that's how I think we should treat each other. We should treat each other as individuals first, and then whatever arbitrary group identity we have comes after that.